Hello, Jacksonites. Take two of this review. Welcome back to Zombiesploitation Episode 2. I greatly apologize for having to redo this review, but it's about a movie that I do like, so who cares? Shouldn't be too much of a problem. But on Zombiesploitation today, I will be reviewing the 2005 adaptation of one of my probably my favorite video game franchise of all time, with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the lead role. Doom from 2005. Yes, indeed. So last week, obviously, I did review this movie. But I discovered the very next day when I went to go rewatch it that 2/3 of the video's audio was unusable. It was super scratchy and glitchy and buzzy, and it was impossible to listen to and impossible to enjoy. So I was really, really pissed. So I just was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to delete this and redo the whole video all over again. I almost did consider scrapping this episode and moving on to the next zombie movie, but I'm going to push forward and I'm going to just do this and go through with my original plans for Zombiesploitation. So hopefully you guys will forgive me for doing this movie a second time. I'll still try to give this video my best shot. So bear with me. So yes, indeed, Doom 2005. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. I am a huge, huge, huge fan of this film. I am a huge fan of Doom. I am a huge fan of The Rock. And if you put those two together and you make it a zombie movie and a very intense, batshit crazy horror film, that sounds like a match made in heaven for me. So I'm not much of a gamer, as I've mentioned in the past. I kind of do like playing video games, but I think the video gaming industry is a very flawed, very, very, very flawed industry. It's in many ways more flawed than the movie industry, in my opinion. I don't like multiplayers. I actually think multiplayer games are the worst elements of the video game industry. I hate RPGs. I don't like sports games. I don't like trying to think. I don't like really fantasy games. I don't like I'm just not a big gamer. My interest in gaming is very, very niche. And very, very minimal. I do like FPS games. I will always dig me some first-person shooter games. But even then, that's very niche as well. I love Halo. In fact, I love the shit out of Halo. I've played the first 4 games, and I'm pretty familiar with Halo lore. I'm a big fan of Killing Floor 2 because of the huge variety of weapons and monsters to kill at your disposal, and Killing Floor 2 is entertaining as hell. I love Gunman Chronicles, which is kind of an unofficial spin-off of the game Half-Life. I like Duke Nukem. I like Quake, especially Quake 4. That's another one of my favorite video games. But my all-time favorite video game franchise is, of course, Doom. I have played every single Doom game in existence, not counting any of the Doom RPG games. I have zero interest in those. I've played almost every single one except for one. I've played the original Doom, of course, all 4 episodes. I have played Doom 2, as well as its spin-off episode. I have not played Final Doom, which was a expansion pack made for Doom 2 that included 2 brand new campaigns using assets from Doom 2. They're almost kind of fan made, but they were given official releases. I've never played those. I'd like to, because of course I'm a big Doom fan, but I think those are pretty hard to get your hands on. Um, I've played Doom 64. I think Doom 64 is the most underrated Doom game, and it's probably my second favorite Doom game, to be honest. I've played Doom 3 and its expansion pack, Resurrection of Evil. Doom 3 is a damn fine game. That's another one of my favorite video games. For the record, I'm just going to say, for those who may not remember, I actually tried to review Doom, the original game, back in, I think, 2019, but I thought that was a terrible video, so I just got rid of it. The original Doom game is my least favorite of all Doom games. Yeah, I played Doom 3, and I was one of those that was utterly blown away when Doom 2016 came out. And I was one of those people that was hoping that it was actually connected to the actual rest of the Doom franchise, and it wasn't just a reboot. And of course, I also own, I do own every single Doom game except for Final Doom. And of course, I was one of those that very eagerly awaited the release of Doom Eternal. That is a masterpiece of gaming cinema. I don't really think you can go any higher in making a phenomenal first person shooter game than Doom Eternal. You just really, really can't, in my opinion. So I'm a pretty damn diehard Doom fan. I'm very familiar with Doom weapons. I'm very familiar with Doom monsters. I'm very familiar with the Doom lore and the Doom story. I am a pretty damn diehard Doom fan. And I'm also a pretty damn diehard fan of this Doom movie. And I was also, despite the fact that I was getting red flags left and right, I was pretty damn excited for the release of Doom Annihilation in 2019. And while I don't think that movie is as bad as most people say it is, it does have quite a lot of problems. That will be another movie that'll be done on Super Kaiju Binge in the future. So look forward to that. It's a shame that I'm in the minority of people that like the Doom 2005 film because it seems like not a lot of people do. And this movie gets a shit ton of hate from Doom fans, casual moviegoers, and kind of some cast members of this movie in recent years. Unfortunately, in particular, The Rock. My personal history with the Doom film, it is tied to the video games, of course. We're all aware of the extremely tumultuous history of video game movies. As I've said, I'm not a huge gamer, but I am aware that the amount of video game adaptations that have been considered bad far outnumber the ones that are considered good. I haven't seen that many, but I have seen reviews of a lot. Like Uwe Boll, who's probably the most infamous director of all time, who intentionally makes bad video game movies just to piss off their fan bases. I actually have seen his House of the Dead. It's an ungodly, stupid, terrible ass movie. Never seen House of the Dead 2, but that does look like kind of a fun movie. What else was there? In the Name of the King, starring Jason Statham. I actually don't think that's a bad movie, though it is stupid as hell and kind of poorly made, but it's got some fun fight scenes. Like I know of the Double Dragon movie, which just looks like ass. The Street Fighter movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, which I don't think is a bad adaptation of Street Fighter, but it is stupid and goofy and 90s as hell. But especially in the early 2000s, it seemed like there was a crap ton of bad video game movies. A lot of them were made by Uwe Boll. But in recent years, I think Hollywood has learned its mistakes. And when there is a big budget studio video game movie that's released. I think now they've learned their lesson in saying, okay, let's actually try to be competent. To name a few examples, there was the Warcraft movie from 2016. I never saw that film, but I'm sort of familiar enough with World of Warcraft, and I remember seeing enough of the buzz surrounding the movie. And from what I remember, it seemed like the reception was fairly positive, saying, okay, this actually isn't terrible. It could have been a lot worse, but it does at least look like a Warcraft film. So there's that. Of course, in 2018, we got Rampage, also starring The Rock, which many are considering to be the very best video game movie of all time. Well, it probably is. And I do love Rampage. Of course, it's one of my favorite films. But I can honestly say this is hands down my favorite video game movie ever made. This is just a lot of favorites in many ways. But my personal history with the Doom film, of course, tied back to the games. My generation of Doom was Doom 3, which was released in 2004. And me, my mom, and stepdad were living in a duplex, a shitty duplex at the time. And as I've stated before, at that time, I was deathly afraid of zombies. I was scared shitless of zombie movies. Even though I was a masochist, I swear, zombies scared the crap out of me, but I just could not get enough of watching them. I would watch the Resident Evil movies on Oh, that's another. Okay, that's probably the most infamous outside of Uwe Boll. I gotta forget those. The Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies are probably both the most famous and most infamous video game films of all time, because not only did it spin off into an entire franchise, but a lot of them are considered by many people to be some of the worst video game films of all time. I don't. Well, a couple of them I do think are pretty bad, but I am a very firm defender of the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil films. Um, those will also be films that will be reviewed, both the Paul movies as well as the four now Resident Evil animated movies, as well as the two new live action. One's a movie and then one's a show. Those will be added to Zombiesploitation as well. But yeah, my generation of Doom was Doom 3. And me being afraid of zombie movies, but also me being in love with watching zombie films. Yeah, I would just watch the fuck out of them. Land of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, the Resident Evil films, Doom, of course. Or well, hang on, let me get to that. Doom 3 really fascinated me because it was a dark, gritty, bloody, violent, scary zombie slash monster slash demon game. And I was like really obsessed with it. My stepdad, he got his hands on the demo when it first came out, but then eventually, not long after that, he went out and bought Doom 3 on PC. So he downloaded it, and I watched him play a lot of Doom 3, and it scared the fuck out of me, but it also endlessly fascinated me and entertained me. I lived and breathed Doom 3. And of course, I had a shit ton of Nerf guns at the time, and I was friends with my neighbor's little son enough as to where he would also watch Doom 3 with me and my stepdad. He would be scared shitless just like me, but also equally fascinated as well. So we would just go out and play Doom outside. But it was really skyrocketed when I discovered that this movie existed. Of course, the year later, when this came out on good old Blockbuster, this is the same disc that my stepdad and mom bought for me way back in the day when this came out on DVD. This is the exact same Blockbuster disc that I still own after all these years. It was a Sunday afternoon, and me and my stepdad went down in our basement. I was like shaking. I was terrified of it, but I was also so excited to watch this movie, and my mind was blown. It's like, oh my God, there's a Doom movie. Gimme. So they bought this for me, and we went down into the basement because my stepdad had a man cave set up down in the basement, including a projector that he could play movies on. So we played this on the projector. I only got about halfway through, but this movie entertained the shit out of me, but it also scared the living fuck out of me. This movie damn near traumatized me. It scared me so bad. But we didn't finish it because I had to go back to my dad's place so that I could go to school. I eagerly awaited, because I would stay with my dad during the weekdays to go to school, and I would stay with my mom's on the weekend. I was itching so badly to watch this movie. And so I finally did. I got back and I just threw the movie. I restarted it from the beginning because I wanted to see the whole thing in one sitting, and I was just completely captivated. This was one of the greatest movies I'd ever seen. I actually think at one point in time, for a little bit, I considered this to be my number one favorite movie of all time. And by the end of it, I was totally exhilarated. And I just instantly fell in love with this movie. Again, I was just like, I loved this movie, I swear. And ever since, it escaped me for a little bit, but I just keep coming back to it for more and more as the years go by. Um, and yeah, it's pretty much stayed the same. I'm a huge fan of this movie. It's one of my favorite zombie movies. It's one of my favorite horror films. In general, it's one of my favorite movies. I am a huge fan of Doom. A big part of that was because I was so obsessed with Doom 3 at the time. This movie takes a lot of inspiration from Doom 3. So even though the plots are fairly different, the movie looks similar enough to Doom 3 to where I felt like, oh, I'm just watching Doom 3 in movie form. I'm just eating this shit up. But yeah, I'm a huge fan. But unfortunately, this movie Doom is a 2005 science fiction action horror film directed by Andrzej Bartkiewicz. He's a Polish guy. He also directed Exit Wounds, which is another movie that I love. Loosely based on the video game series of the same name, specifically Doom 3 from 2004, the film stars Carl Urban, Rosamund Pike, Razak Adoti, and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. This was one of The Rock's earlier movies, coming right after The Rundown, I believe. Either The Rundown or Walking Tall. In the film, Marines are sent on a rescue mission to a facility on Mars where where they encounter demonic-like creatures. Can you tell I'm excited? After film rights with Universal Pictures and Columbia Pictures expired, id Software signed a deal with Warner Brothers with the stipulation that the film would be greenlit within a year. But Warner Brothers lost the rights, which were subsequently given back to Universal, which started production on this film in 2004. I think they wanted to cash in on the success of Doom 3. That's why they wanted it to be greenlit within a year. The film was an international co-production of the United States, the United Kingdom, the Czech Republic, and Germany. Doom was released in the U.S. October 25th, 2005, to near sadly universal negative reviews. And the film was also a box office bomb, grossing 58.7 million against a production budget of 60 to 70 million. The failure of this movie led to no more Doom films until 2019, when Universal released a second direct-to-video film titled Doom Annihilation. Again, more on that with oh, was it? Horror and Metal is here saying Exit Wounds was the first R-rated movie I saw at the theater. I love that movie. That's one of Seagal's most underrated movies, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, and sadly, this movie doesn't really have a lot of. Well, I have seen that it seems like this film has more of a cult following since then, but even The Rock has come out to say that um in 2009, The Rock described the film as an example of trying and failing to do a good video game adaptation, and that it was a cautionary tale of what not to do. In 2021, Rosamund Pike expressed embarrassment for not familiarizing herself with the source material, commenting, "I feel partly to blame in that respect because I think I failed just through ignorance and innocence to understand, to fully get a picture of what Doom meant to fans at that point. I wasn't a gamer, I didn't understand. If I knew what I knew now, I would have dived right into all of that and got fully immersed in it like I do now. And I just didn't understand. I feel embarrassed, really." So it kind of feels like, well, it kind of seems like Rosamund Pike might be a gamer. Um, oh, it's on HBO Max. So Horror and Metal. There's your way to give it a rewatch. It's on HBO Max now. You better get it before HBO Max gets shut down, because Warner Brothers is kind of going crazy right now. John Carmack, co-founder of id Software and co-creator of Doom, spoke favorably of this movie, stating, "I liked it. Nobody expects a video game movie to be Oscar material, but I thought it was a good, solid action movie with lots of fun nods to the gaming community." And yeah, hold on one sec. Yeah, that's what I like about it. Oh, but of course Roger Ebert hated it, because Roger Ebert was a horse's ass when it came to um horror films. But yeah, I like what John Carmack has to say about it. That's really the best thing that you can do. So I want to comment too that the argument of whether or not um I've seen a lot of people complain that a lot of video game movies aren't very faithful to their source material. Now, while sometimes I do agree, it just kind of seems like a lot of times directors will make a movie, but then they'll slap the video game franchise's name on it just to give it some recognition when it barely has anything to do with its source material. I can't quite think of any off the top of my head that does that. But I'm sure there have been. Oh, House of the Dead, for example. That's not really an adaptation of any House of the Dead game in particular. Um, but I do like it when video game movies, they take elements and inspiration from their source material, but they still try to do more of their own thing and not just copy whatever's going on screen in the video game. Like, I would still watch it And apparently they are doing this with the upcoming show that's trying to get made. But take The Last of Us, for example, another one of my favorite video games. I dig the fuck out of that game. If they were to make a live action The Last of Us game and have it just be a beat for beat, shot for shot copy of everything that happens in The Last of Us, I would still watch it, but I would also feel like that's kind of pointless because why would I want to watch that when I can just go play it and have it be always better? Because The Last of Us is a long ass game. It's hard to cram all of that much story into a 2 hour long film. Again, I would still watch it because I'm a Last of Us fan, but I am glad that they're making it into a show and not a movie. But if it was just to be a beat for beat adaptation, what's the point? Um, so I think video game movies have to have a good balance. Follow some, or another example is the Sonic the Hedgehog games. Haven't seen them, but those are taking plenty of elements from the Sonic franchise, and they're taking those and throwing them in the movie, but they're also still kind of doing their own original story, which that I also do like. I mean, you take one look at it and you're like, yeah, that's Sonic the Hedgehog. That is a Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Same goes for the first few Resident Evil movies. They took inspiration from the source material, but they were still doing their own original story, but having plenty of nods and Easter eggs to the games. The same thing goes for this movie. Um, it's its own original story. Um, it does its own thing, but it has plenty of references to the games, and it takes plenty of influence from the games as well. It's a good balance of new and old. That I think that's the best way to do a video game adaptation. Another good example, of course, is Rampage. Sure, according to Ryan and Horror and Metal here, that it's not a very good technically adaptation of the original Rampage games, but it still has that Rampage spirit, and it has the three original monsters from the first game. So you take one look at it and you're just like, yep, that's Rampage. So good enough for me. But with all that said, nearly a half hour into this review, let's get into the plot of Doom 2005. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor. That's good. In 2026, a wormhole known as the Ark to an ancient city on Mars is discovered deep below the Nevada desert. A wormhole portal, I think I said that. 20 years later, the 85 personnel at the Union Aerospace Corporation, UAC, Doom's version of Resident Evil's and the Umbrella Corporation, essentially, a research facility on Mars, are attacked by an unknown assailant. Following a distress call sent by Dr. Carmack, a squad of 8 Marines are sent to the research facility. The team includes squad leader Sergeant Asher Sarge Mahonen, Duke, Goat, Destroyer, Portman, Mac, a rookie known as the Kid, and John Reaper Grimm, played by The Rock, playing Sergeant Asher Sarge Mahonen, and Carl Urban playing John Reaper Grimm. They are sent on a search and destroy mission to Mars, with UAC only concerned with the retrieval of computer data from their anthropology, archaeology, and genetics experiments. Taking my glasses off. The team uses the Ark to reach Mars, ordering the Earth site on lockdown. Arriving on Mars, they are met by UAC employee Pinky, who is in a wheelchair, and Reaper finds his twin sister, Dr. Sam Grimm, played by Rosamund Pike, and escorts her to retrieve the data. He learns that a dig site where their parents were accidentally killed years earlier was reopened, and ancient skeletons of a humanoid race, genetically enhanced with an artificial 24th chromosome pair, were discovered. While searching for survivors in the facility, the Marines find a traumatized and injured Dr. Carmack and escort him to the medical lab for treatment, but he later disappears. The Marines shoot at an unknown creature in the genetics lab that leads them down into the facility's sewer, where it attacks and kills Goat. They kill the creature and take it to the medical lab, where Sam performs an autopsy and discovers that it has human organs. A little reminiscent of The Thing. She and Duke witness Goat resurrecting and killing himself by smashing his head in against a reinforced glass window. The two are attacked by a creature, trap it, and soon deduce that it is a mutated Dr. Carmack. Imps, essentially. The squad methodically tracks down and destroys several of the creatures, though Mac, Destroyer, and Portman die in the process. And an angered Sarge kills the mutated Dr. Carmack. Sam, Reaper, and Sarge learn that UAC was experimenting on humans using the extra Martian chromosome, C24, harvested from the remains of the ancient skeletons, but the mutants got loose, leading to the outbreak. Sam and Reaper try to convince Sarge that the creatures are humans from the facility mutated by the C24 serum, and that not all of those infected will fully transform into monsters. Sam hypothesizes that some of those injected with C24 will develop superhuman abilities but retain their humanity, while others with a predisposition for violent and psychotic behavior will become monsters, a pattern she believes also happened with the Martians who built the Ark to escape. Some creatures use the Ark to reach Earth, where they slaughter or mutate the research staff. The Marines, Sam, and Pinky follow, and Sarge orders the squad to sanitize the entire facility. When Kid informs Sarge that he found but refuses to kill a group of survivors, Sarge executes Kid for insubordination, leading to a standoff with an armed Pinky. The group is suddenly attacked by zombies and a Hell Knight who kill Duke and drag Sarge and Pinky away. Reaper is wounded by a ricocheting bullet. I can't tell where he got shot. It's either in his gut, his leg, or his dick. To prevent him from bleeding to death, Sam injects her brother with the C24 serum, despite his concern that his violent past predisposes him to transform into a monster. Reaper regains consciousness and finds his wounds have healed and that Sam has gone missing. Using his new C24 superhuman abilities, he fights his way through the facility, gunning down zombies, Hell Knights, and a monstrous Pinky Demon before finding an unconscious Sam with Sarge, whom has become infected and has murdered the group of survivors Kid had previously found. Reaper and Sarge engage in a fight, both of them enhanced with superhuman powers. Reaper is able to gain the upper hand and throws Sarge through the Ark back to Mars along with an ST grenade, which destroys Sarge and the Mars facility. Reaper then carries his unconscious sister into the elevator and rides back up to the ground level in Nevada, thus ending the film. And I think you could have made a sequel to this, but alas, the film bombed and the movie stays the way it is. So how about this plot? I dig it. I really, really do dig it. As I've stated, it's its own thing. It is sort of a loose adaptation of Doom 3. It takes place on Mars. Well, I'll get to those in just a minute. But it takes place on Mars. It looks similar to Doom 3. It features monsters that look similar to Doom 3's monsters. But it is still its own thing. But it has enough nods and references and motifs from its source material to, at least in my opinion, make it obvious if you were to take one look at it. You're just like, oh, Doom. And I love it. It is a zombie movie slash like a monster movie. I have seen some people say that this has more in common with Resident Evil than Doom. I can see where they're coming from, and I kind of agree in certain ways. But to me, still, this feels like Doom. Um, Even looking past my biasness towards Doom, I think this is a pretty solid ass Doom movie, in my opinion. It's awesome, entertaining, scary, gripping, action packed, and it's just a great fucking movie, in my opinion. So, in my original review, I think I had 10 pros. Now I have 12. Actually, no, I'm going to say that there is 13. So I have 13 pros. Yeah, 13. So let's get into it, shall we? The first pro is the characters. I love this movie's cast. It is a bit reminiscent of Aliens, and I do think that is what that was like a similar vibe that they were wanting to go for with this film. It feels kind of like Aliens. Actually, hell, the plot, now that I think about it, is kind of similar to Aliens. A group of Marines, space Marines, are sent to a colony when they stop receiving transmissions from them, and they're sent in to investigate. And there's a swarm of monsters that have killed everybody and are trying to kill them too. Break it down, it's actually eerily similar to Aliens now that I think about it. But I like it. I love Aliens. And if you take out the xenomorphs and replace them with zombies and monsters, it still works. Um, but the cast is very, very solid. Not gonna go, well, no, I'll go through the cast. Oh, we have Carl Urban as John Reaper Grimm. He's this movie's Doom guy. I love him. I think he's a pretty awesome dude. Um, he speaks, of course. That's one thing about the Doom guy that makes him unique is that he said one word at the very end of Doom Eternal, but he doesn't speak. But obviously, Carl Urban speaks. Carl Urban's great. He's a more no nonsense, all professional, um, kind of almost like kind of a dead serious guy, but he's still a badass. He knows how to use his guns. He knows how to use his fists. He knows how to think on his feet. And his chemistry with the rest of the cast is overall pretty solid. He definitely is believable as a Marine and very believable as an ass kicking zombie and monster slaying badass. Rosamund Pike as Dr. Samantha Grimm. I like her a lot too, John's sister. She kind of reminds me of Kate from Tremors 2 in the fact that she's a little more brave than a typical female damsel in distress character. She is spooked by the monsters, but she's not afraid of getting her hands dirty, and she's not afraid of studying the monsters when she's up close and personal. Like I said, she does get spooked, but she does know how to stay strong and still be helpful to the cause. Um, and her chemistry with the rest of the cat, mostly with John. I definitely buy these. I definitely do buy these two as brother and sister. Their chemistry strong. You can tell that their relationship has been strained. She wanted to follow in her parents' footsteps and become an archaeologist or a scientist, but because they were both raised by archaeologists and scientists, um, She wanted to follow in their footsteps, but John did not. You can presume it's because he was so haunted by the death of his parents that he wanted to go off and do his own thing. But still, he does retain a lot of his scientific knowledge that he was taught to by his parents, and that's how he's able to find a little bit of common ground with Sam in investigating the monsters. And their brother sisterly bond, I think, is pretty strong as the movie goes on. You can tell that he does still care for her. Like when Sarge and John are about to go kill some more monsters, he gives her a radio saying, "This is Portman's comm. You call if you need help, okay? Are you going to be all right?" She says, "I'll be fine." And he says kind of softly to her, "I'll see you soon." And you can definitely buy his concern when he's gunning down zombies and monsters at the end of the film in order to find his sister. It's great. I love their chemistry. It's very strong. The rest of the Marines, except for The Rock, as Sarge, he's awesome. As I've said, I'm a huge fan of The Rock. I've seen many of his movies. I own many of his movies. People are already talking shit about him as Black Adam, thinking that he's going to destroy the DCEU. I don't. I think he's going to be the one to really give it the kick in the ass that the franchise deserves. Even though I'm a big fan of the DC Extended Universe, I do think that it does need another kick in the ass. I'm excited for Black Adam. Um, Anytime that The Rock is in something, at least that I'm interested in, if it's an action movie or a monster movie or a superhero movie, I'm down. I'm a huge fan of The Rock. And this, I think, is one of his, maybe not quite one of his best roles, but I do think it's one of his most underrated performances. This is a rare case where you actually see The Rock play a villain. The only other movie I can think of where he actually is the villain is The Mummy. The Mummy Returns. Excuse me. He is still a good guy in the Scorpion King film, but in The Mummy Returns, he is the villain. He's the Scorpion King. Here, he doesn't start out as a villain. He starts out as a good guy, and you can buy his genuine care and respect for his soldiers. He takes his job very seriously. He's very professional. You can definitely tell he's a badass. But he has like a slight little playful side to him. He's like he does smile at his coworkers quite a bit, and he's respectful to them, saying like right before they enter the complex, he says, "Be safe, gentlemen. Portman Goat, lead on." You can buy his genuine care for his soldiers, and when they get killed, you'd buy his anger and frustration. And as the movie goes on, Sarge really starts to become unhinged and more mad as the film goes on. I actually have a couple theories that would explain why he uh, he goes crazy. I'll talk about them now, actually. So the movie presents it as the film goes on, as the stakes get higher and higher and higher, more people die, more monsters show up. The pressure to keep the monsters from invading Earth just gets greater and greater. Because first it's don't let them get through the ark, and then when they do get through the ark, the mission is now to keep them contained inside the UAC facility. And as the monsters just keep rampaging and rampaging, shit just gets worse and worse. He's trying so hard to keep things under control, but then by the end of the movie, he kind of just goes mad with power. And then quite literally, he goes mad with power when he becomes infected. Now, the movie plays it off just simply as that. He didn't start out as a bad guy, but as the situation kept getting worse and worse, it kind of turned him into a bad guy, and that's what led to him getting infected. On my recent rewatch, uh, now he does become infected at the end of the film, but I think it might be a possibility that he might have been infected earlier in the film. He and Destroyer are walking through a corridor and they hear something scuttling around in an air vent above them. So Destroyer opens up a grate and he looks up inside the vent, and in there is a monkey that spooks Destroyer and Sarge into shooting the shit out of it with their guns. He sees blood dripping out of where they shot it, so he goes to catch it with his hands, and he notices that the blood is coagulated. Um, Later in the film, when actually the scene right after that, one of the scientists is taking a sample of Dr. Carmack's blood, and they notice that it's also coagulated. And they notice, or they don't notice, but you can tell at this point, Dr. Carmack is starting to transform into an imp. His face is getting all more deformed and demonic and looking more like a mutant. Um, And if you're really paying attention, you can see that the rest of the monsters throughout the movie, when they get shot, their blood is all coagulated. Now, for those who don't know, when your blood gets coagulated, that means your blood thickens and it congeals. This happens after a human dies, or a mammal specifically dies, because mammals have a high body temperature and their blood keeps flowing and it's like it's warm all throughout their body. But when a human dies, their blood stops flowing throughout their body and it starts to cool and congeal in a human's veins. So it makes sense that if a zombie was to be walking around, it would have severely coagulated blood as well. This is established in the very first Resident Evil film, so I like that about that too. Um, but if we can assume that the infection is in the blood of zombies and monsters, now, there was no open wound on the Rock's hands, but because this is supposed to be more demonic and alien in nature, who's to say that the Rock touching the infected monkey's blood, that itself was enough for the Rock to get infected? I don't think there's anybody else that get like Duke, he gets scratched by an imp, and he never turns into a monster. So I could be reaching with this, but maybe that was a contributing factor into Sarge's declining mental state throughout the rest of the movie. Because, and the reason I bring this up, it's because The Rock's demeanor and attitude after that point is when it starts to really go downhill. He starts becoming way more aggressive and way more mean, essentially. You could chalk it up because he he's in he touches the monkey, but then Goat is killed in the sewers, and when they bring Goat back to try to resuscitate him, they fail and he dies. And then Sarge looks at Samantha and goes, "Doctor, you're going to tell me just what the fuck is going on here." And he gets really, really nasty and mean for the rest of the movie. Again, you could chalk it up as he's just very angry and very upset over the loss of his soldiers. So that's why he's starting to snap. Or it could be a combination of that and the virus is slowly taking over the Rock. And as he gets more and more deranged and angry, the virus gets worse and worse until he's eventually infected. And that's what turns him into a monster by the end of the film. Apologies if that sounded a little rambly, but that's just a fan theory. If people can make fan theories about John Carpenter's The Thing, then I can make a theory about Doom 2005. So sue me. Okay. And I spent a whole bunch of that talking about the cast. The rest of the cast, they're technically just all cannon fodder, but similar to Aliens, they do all have their time to, like, a little time to shine, and they do have all their quirks and ticks established, just like in Aliens. We have Diobia Aperi as Destroyer. He's more like the strong silent type. He carries the chain gun, so of course. We have Ben Daniels as Eric Goat Phantom. He's the religious shotgun-toting badass, which is barely used in this movie, which is a little bit of a shame because the shotgun is such an iconic gun in the Doom franchise, but it's barely used in this movie. Raz Adoti as Gregory Duke Schofield, who I think he was also in Resident Evil Apocalypse, which came out the year before, as Peyton, I think. He's funny. He's the one who develops a little bit of like a rapport with Sam. You can tell he's got a massive boner for her. And she seems slightly interested, but he more so becomes her guardian throughout the film, a little more than John, because he's with her more than John. And you can definitely buy her pain and anguish when he's killed, sliced in half. We have Richard Brake as Dean Portman, Bill from Tremor 7. He's the comedic relief. He's very perverted. He's very he's a horn dog, essentially. He's almost a little disgusting with how sex obsessed he is, but I think he's funny. Kind of an acquired taste, his sense of humor. And he's kind of the one who's just, he always laughs at the wrong time and finds the worst and stupidest things funny. But I think Portman's kind of funny. Dexter Fletcher is Pinky. He's all right. He's only got a few scenes. He's mostly just here to set up the Pinky Demon, but I like him. Al Weaver as Mark Kidd Dantalian. He's very wet behind the ears, but he's very eager to join the group of Marines, and he tries his best to get along with them. And it's a shame when he dies. And then we have two more. Oh, that was Brian Steele. Okay, cool. Hold on. There's one. Ooh, nice. The only other two cast members of note is Brian Steele as Curtis Stahl, but specifically / the Hell Knights, and Doug Jones as the Imps. Should I wait? Yeah, I'll wait on talking about those guys. But yeah, we have Brian Steele, who's a big monster guy, and Doug Jones, who's also a big monster guy, as the Hell Knights and Imps. So yeah, the cast is great. Pretty reminiscent of Aliens, but I think it's in a good way. They're going for that similar camaraderie and kinship and badassery that the Marines and Aliens were going for too. I think they pull it off pretty well. Which, speaking of which, oh, here it is. There it is. God, Jesus. Whew. Pro number 2 is the camaraderie and the Marine accuracy, as I put it. Not much to say about the camaraderie. I kind of just put it there. You can tell that these guys have spent a lot of time together. they've gone a lot of missions together, and their tight kinship bond is very strong. And you can, again, like I said, you can tell that these guys have done a lot of shit together and they're good friends. And the Marine accuracy too is also of note, in my opinion. These guys spent 2 weeks learning how to be Marines. Yeah. The RRTS actors underwent military training for 2 weeks under military advisor Tom McAdams. And I think it was pulled off pretty well. How these guys operate throughout the film, I think, is very, very strong. They're very believable as Marines. How they hold their weapons is pretty good. It's always in only one, well, not in one hand, but they never alternate grips, at least as far as I know. It's always in one stationary position. They always have both of their eyes open, which is an important thing to do. If you're aiming a gun, you never close one eye in order to aim, because with one eye closed, you're cutting out a whole lot of your vision, so somebody could very easily attack you from here and you'd never see it. How they walk throughout the film too, they always have their guns up but kind of down, but they're still using their lights in order to see throughout the facility. They always walk in what's called a combat crouch. Oh, I'm not going to be reviewing Prey for a very long time. If it ever gets a DVD release, I'll do it. But until then, nope. Anyway, so they always do what's a combat crouch. Marines keep their back straight and their gun up, but they always have their legs bent, and they walk in that combat crouch, which is very accurate too. And when the Marines move throughout hallways and corners, they always go one at a time. And before they turn a corner, they say, "Clear, clear," when they enter a new room or a new hallway. And like I said, they take turns. One Marine will go a few steps forward, then stop. Then another one will go a few steps forward, then stop. And then another one will go a few steps forward and stop. They leapfrog. I think that's what they call it. And they don't spray and pray their weapons when they're shooting at something. They always do. I think it's called focus controlled fire, or to quote Hicks from Aliens, short controlled burst. They don't spray and pray their guns. They'll do like a 5-round burst of ammo and then stop and then do another 5-round burst when they're shooting at something. Unless they're like toward the end of the movie when there's a whole horde of zombies in front of them. At that point, they just kind of spray and pray, but that's just because there's a whole horde. So they're just gunning down shit left and right. But the Marine accuracy for this movie, I think, is very, very strong. And it was only 2 weeks, but it seemed like they did learn a lot of shit in those 2 weeks in order to actually look like Marines. It's great. Pro number 3 is the tension all throughout this movie. This movie is very tense and it's very heavy because a whole lot of fucked up shit happens throughout this movie. The movie literally starts with people getting pulled off into the shadows, and a chick gets her arm torn off, and a monster rips through a giant metal door. The movie starts with a bang, and it keeps that tension up all throughout the movie to the point where you're almost like choking. It's so heavy. And like I said, never really lets up until toward the end when it starts getting way more action-packed, but more so batshit crazy. Also, like Doom 3, a lot of the early levels in Doom 3 are really, really intense. There's lots of shit happening left and right. The situation just goes completely tits up, and you're just along for the ride. But toward the end of Doom 3 is when it starts to become way more action-packed, but still has that horror edge. Same thing with this movie as well. It starts becoming more action-packed as the film goes on, but it has that really tense feel. It's very raw and it's very visceral, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it's also kind of unpredictable. And I love that about this film. Pro number 4 is the pacing. I think this movie is very cinematically paced. Nary a scene drags. Everything feels vital and integral to the film's story. Um, all the lore and the world building and the character development and the action and the suspense, it all is very, very, very strong in my opinion. Everything here is just firing on all cylinders in order to give you the best possible thing. I love it. It's very good. I'm never bored watching this movie. It's endlessly entertaining. Pro number 5 is the lighting. Now, I mentioned this last time. This movie is very dark. Doom 3 is also very dark, and that adds to the game's horror atmosphere. Because I have the Doom 3 BFG edition, which the game in and of itself is brightened up quite a lot from its PC counterpart. But it in the original version of Doom 3, the game is very dark, and you have to select a flashlight as its own individual weapon in order to see around. Because the game is so dark, like it's both dark in tone and dark as in I can't see a damn thing in front of my face. The Doom 3 BFG edition fixes that problem up quite a bit, but it removes the selectable flashlight and just adds a feature where you can turn a flashlight on that's mounted to your chest off and on willy-nilly. But this movie is very dark. Not like Alien vs. Predator Requiem, thankfully, where it's so damn dark you cannot tell what's going on. It's dark more like the first Alien vs. Predator. The movie is almost 2/3 of the time lit with this dark blue light. And there's lots of darkness and shadows all throughout the film. But thankfully, it's done in a way where you can see everything that's going on. It's just a very dark, scary, grungy place to be. It adds itself to the spooky and creepy atmosphere, and it adds itself into the film's unpredictability. Because the facility is so dark, it's big and wide and expansive, just like in the original Alien, but they don't know where they are, and the monsters know where they are. So you never know if a zombie's going to be in this corner, or a Hell Knight's going to be in this corner, or a couple imps is going to be in that corner. And the only lights that they have really to work with, especially when they go down in the sewer, is their gun-mounted flashlight. Which that's a minor issue that I have. It's like a huge petty nitpick. As a person who always carries at least 2 flashlights on his person, me, as a Marine, I even think nowadays this is actually preached. Now, Marines carry guns with flashlights on them, but they're always taught to have a backup plan. So a lot of times, a lot of Marines have a backup pocket flashlight um, in their gear. Why the hell do these guys not have a backup flashlight? Because, sure, you're always holding your gun. So sure, you'll always have it, but what if your flashlight on your gun dies? You're fucked if it's dark. And that's what happens to Goat. That's how he gets killed. Because his gun-mounted flashlight dies out. He doesn't have a backup that he could just pull out and hold along with his gun. So that's a huge nitpick of mine, but whatever. But yeah, I love the lighting of this film. Um, I lost track of what I was saying. Fuck. Oh yeah, the lighting. I really dig this movie's lighting. It, like I said, it adds to the scares, and it adds to this movie's atmosphere and tension. I love it. Which, speaking of which, the scares in this, being pro number 6, are pretty fucking awesome. Mostly it's the jump scares. I love all this movie's jump scares. It's, again, very, very. So there's lots of buildup and there's lots of tension and suspense, and that's broken by all the jump scares. Some of them are fairly telegraphed, but I still think that they are effective. Um, though a couple of them are pretty warranted, in my opinion. The first one, which I forgot to mention last time, excuse me, is when Goat is killed in the sewers. He's scanning the sewer. This is scary too. His flashlight dies. They all have gun-mounted cameras that Pinky can see from his command center. But because it's so dark, Goat asks him, Pinky, can you see anything? Pinky can't. He says, nope, nothing. He's scanning with his gun, and in the darkness, he sees a pair of eyes. So he looks at him, and earlier they had found a scientist lab coat with a name tag of Dr. Willits. So he sees the eyes, and he's thinking, Dr. Willits? Now you see the two eyes in the darkness, but then like 7 other eyes open up all around his, and out jumps an imp, which bites him and kills him, or at least like incapacitates him. Hang on 1 second. Okay, sorry. So when I remember when I first saw that, I about shit myself the first time. That scared the crap out of me. Let's see, what's another one? Actually, no, I don't really think the jump scares are all that telegraphed. Well, I mean, they're telegraphed to me because I've seen this movie so many times. And if you've seen enough horror movies, you can kind of see the jump scares coming. But I still think that the jump scares are pretty damn effective. Another one, okay, this is probably the most telegraphed, but I think it was kind of intentionally done this way. During the standoff, right after Sarge kills the kid, let me push this away real quick. Sarge and Reaper have like their guns kind of pointed at each other, and they're looking at each other really intensely. But then Pinky is over here with his pistol saying, drop the weapons. I mean it. I have no intention of being killed by a madman. Drop the weapons. Sarge is looking at him like kind of mean, like, but then his face changes from being mean to surprise. And then we cut to Pinky. He notices, and you hear a soft growling sound. So then he's like, oh, there's something behind me, isn't there? And then a hand grabs him by the head and lifts him up and smashes him into the ground. It's a Hell Knight. And then the Hell Knight takes Pinky's body and smashes it into Reaper and a pillar, and he runs off with Pinky. And they start trying to gun him down. That also scared the crap out of me when I first saw this movie, because it technically is pretty telegraphed, and I almost kind of hate to laugh at it too, because I do think it's a little humorous. I kind of feel bad for laughing at it, especially now. It's just like, oh, there's something behind me, isn't there? I don't think it was really made to be funny, but it kind of is. But still, it's a pretty, and the entire time that the Hell Knight is swinging and smashing him around, Pinky is screaming the entire time. So it's pretty horrific and fucked up, and it's especially at this point where the movie starts to get really batshit crazy. Pro number 7 is the music. I love the music to this film. The music was done by a guy named Clint Mansell, who is a musician, singer, and a music composer. He's done a lot of TV stuff. This is hands down my favorite of all the music that he's done. Uh, it Doom, the original game, is pretty infamous for almost blatantly plagiarizing a lot of heavy metal and rock bands like Nine Inch Nails and AC/DC and Hell's Bell, or not Hell's Bells, that's AC/DC. Alice in Chains. There's a lot of music that sounds very, very similar to a lot of those bands. So Doom has always kind of had a kind of like a badass rock synth heavy metal theme to it. And in this movie, there's a lot of spooky music because this is a horror movie. But there's also a lot of really badass, kick-ass action movie music too. It's spooky when it needs to be. It's thrilling when it needs to be. It's action-packed when it needs to be. And I should have mentioned this last time. Throughout the film, there's this creepy sound that is made all throughout the movie. It's like this echoing, creaky sound. It's like all throughout the movie in the really quiet and tense and suspenseful moments, you hear nothing except the footsteps of the Marines and that creaky sound, that this ambient noise. It's so good. It adds itself so well to the creepy atmosphere. But overall, not a whole lot to say. But still, the music for this movie is just absolutely stellar, in my opinion. Pro number 8 is the action scenes are pretty awesome. The final fight between Carl Urban and The Rock it's a little short, but it's very brutal. It's very intense. It's very hard hitting. It's very vicious, but it's also just entertaining as fuck. Um, yeah, it's great, but mostly it's just all shootouts. Um, they get bigger and bigger and bigger as the movie goes on. There's one scene in particular that I'm going to save for one of my pros. But first, there's a shootout with a Hell Knight and Imp. Then there's the sewer action scene when John, well, not really an action scene, but when John guns down an Imp. Then Duke fights and traps Dr. Carmack. Then there's, probably my second favorite action scene. After that, there's the Pinky standoff shootout with a whole swarm of zombies. But before that, there's a big action scene involving Destroyer versus a Hell Knight. They establish in the film that they have a holding cell, which is like a 20-foot deep hole that's maybe also 20 feet wide, and the walls are electrified. Destroyer is grabbed by a Hell Knight and tossed into that hole. It jumps down in there with him, but Destroyer tries to fight it. He drop kicks it, smashes it in the face with a computer monitor, stabs it in the neck with his knife, and cracks it in the face a couple times with a lead pipe. Fuck, my nose! Fuck! Cracks it in the head with a lead pipe a couple times. And also, Destroyer ends up pinning the Hell Knight against the wall with a larger pipe. and he tries to crawl out, but the Hell Knight like smashes the pipe and bends it so it can get free, and then it yanks the chain that Destroyer is trying to climb out with, and he falls and dies. It's pretty cool to see just a regular person try to fight against one of the strongest Doom monsters. And he tries. He gives a very, very valiant effort, but in the end, the Hell Knight's just too strong. Yeah, the action scenes are very well done. They're very well edited. They're very well choreographed. They're just a lot of fun to watch. Pro number 8 is I'll just talk about this. The first person shooter sequence. So John is injected with C24 and he passes out due to blood loss, but he wakes up some time later and it's from the first person perspective. He looks around and he notices that his wounds that he got when he was smashed in the face by Pinky by the Hell Knight have all healed. So he loads up his gun and he goes on a first-person shooter rampage all throughout the film, or all throughout the facility, gunning down zombies, imps and Hell Knights all throughout the facility, and it is awesome. It's kind of goofy. Well, not really goofy, but it's not scary. It's just highly entertaining. I'd say it's more over the top. That's a good way to put it too. It's very over the top. It's very action packed. It's very thrilling. There's a little section here about it. The first person shooter sequence was completely directed by John Farhat and was filmed in 14 days after a planning period of 3 months. While the scene is shown as one continuous shot, multiple cuts that Farhat called hookups were made during filming. Farhat stated you can do it by moving a camera and passing something and then cutting, and when rolling the camera again on a subsequent date. This was done similarly in Alfred Hitchcock's Rope in order to give the illusion that the entire movie is shot in one take. Other hookup styles were used by using a green screen or a blue screen when the door opens, or by jump cutting by whipping an object. The gun was only used on screen when it was needed to shoot something due to its size affecting the aspect ratio. It does like bob and weave. Like what John will raise it up to shoot something, but then when he moves on, he'll move the gun down and then bring it back up when he needs to shoot something. But it's awesome. It's only about 5 minutes long. But he does a lot of shit. He guns down a bunch of zombies. He guns down, I think, 4 imps. He kills a Hell Knight by shooting a gas tank and setting the Hell Knight on fire, which is something that you do a lot in Doom. You'll shoot explosive barrels to kill surrounding monsters. And then he kills a second Hell Knight by shooting off one of its arms that's wielding a chainsaw, also taken from Doom. But then he sets a trip mine down. The Hell Knight steps on it, and it explodes, killing the Hell Knight, which is awesome. And finally, the first-person shooter sequence ends with John taking on the Pinky Demon with a chainsaw. It's fucking awesome. It's so goddamn entertaining. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. It's a little goofy, but it's awesome in my opinion. It just feels right out of Doom. Fuck. Excuse me. My nose is just itching like crazy. And I lost track. Fuck. Pro number 10 is the game accuracy. Now again, this is a loose Doom game, but there's enough of Doom 3 that's brought over into this to obviously recognize that, okay, this is obviously an influence from Doom 3. The overall look and aesthetic of the UAC facility is very similar. It's very futuristic, but it also looks old and used and kind of run down. It's very dark. It is set place on Mars, which Doom 3 is also set on Mars. The UAC is pretty much at fault here, just like in Doom 3 and in the movie. It's just kind of like Umbrella and Resident Evil. The Hell Knights and Pinky Demons and Imps look very, very, very similar to how they do in Doom 3. The Pinky Demon is probably it mostly looks similar to Doom 3, but in Doom 3, the Pinky Demon didn't have a wheelchair for legs. It just had normal human legs, but a really kind of like a shaved gorilla dog pig hybrid thing that had dog and pig roars, but it still looks like, oh, that's clearly the Doom 3 Pinky Demon. Just in this movie, it has a wheelchair for legs instead of human legs. But overall, you can obviously tell if you're a big fan of Doom 3 and you watch this movie, you can just easily search through the movie and pick out and say, oh, that's from Doom 3, that's from Doom 3, that's from Doom 3, and that's clearly from Doom 3. I think fans of Doom 3, especially with the inclusion of the first-person shooter sequence, will appreciate all the nods and references to Doom 3 in this movie. Pro number 11 is the batshit craziness. Just as the movie goes on, as more fucked up shit keeps happening left and right, and as the stakes get higher, more monsters show up and more shit happens, the movie just feels balls out, off the wall crazy. And I love it. I like that the movie is batshit crazy, just like Spider-Man 3. It's unpredictable, it's nuts, it's over the top, and it's entertaining as hell. Pro number 12 is the gore. This movie is very violent, and it's very bloody and very, very fucked up. All the monsters, like, they always look slimy and wet and gross and slathered in blood. Like, they always have drool or blood leaking from their mouths. All the zombies have blood and drool and other bodily fluids leaking out of them. When monsters and zombies get shot, they spray blood all over the place. Watching Sam disembowel the one imp in the lab, the effects are slimy and gnarly and gruesome. When the Hell Knight gets killed by John with the landmine, there's a big bright explosion, and then it fades, and you see there's just ocean of blood and guts and body parts all over the damn floor. When the Pinky Demon is cut up with the chainsaw, it is just oozing and leaking blood all over the place. And by the end of it, it's just a hot mess. There's body parts all over the place. There's intestines. There's blood and guts and carnage candy galore. Hold on. Okay. So, and all this gore is thanks to the final pro for this film, pro number 13, the phenomenal ass practical special effects. There's some digital stuff here. Um, there's a couple digital shots of Hell Knights. The Pinky Demon is all CGI. That's fine though. That's fine though. It does still look good. There's a couple shots where it looks a little cartoony, and there's a couple shots where there's some obvious green screen shots. Um, Okay, sorry. There's a couple obvious green screen effects, and the digital stuff, for the most part, is pretty noticeable. I wouldn't say it's bad though. It's 2005. This movie had a 50 to 60 or a 60 to 70 million dollar budget, so I think the CGI looks good. But this was still during the time when studios did have the hybrid mentality of using both digital and practical effects. And with this being a monster movie, the practical effects are still top fucking notch. All the blood is real. Well, most of the blood. There's some digital blood, but that's okay. It's all real blood, real fake body parts, real cow guts, and uh, fake body parts, um, and the suit effects. So the Brian Steele plays the Hell Knight, or the Hell Knights, I should say, and Doug Jones plays the Imps. Brian Steele has a pretty is a pretty well-known suit actor in sci-fi and monster movies. He played Harry and the Henderson, or Harry and Harry and the Hendersons, the series, not the movie. That was Kevin Peter Hall, but he's still a tall dude. He's 6'7". He also played the robot most recently in the Netflix Lost in Space series. But I know him best from this movie and also as Samael in the 2004 Guillermo del Toro Hellboy film. Doug Jones is a very prominent suit actor for monster and creature features. He's a very skinny dude, and he's very good at ballet and mime, and he studied those in order to have complete control of his body in order to play very skinny, threatening, otherworldly, gangly creatures. Two of his most famous roles, he was Abe Sapien in both Guillermo del Toro uh, Hellboy films, but he also played the eyeless, eyeball on hands monster in Pan's Labyrinth. And he also played the amphibian man in The Shape of Water. Both Brian and Doug do great jobs as their respective monsters. The Hell Knight is very large and menacing and threatening, and the imps are very spindly, nasty, scurrying little bastards. But yeah, they all do great jobs playing their monsters. The suit effects are great. I don't think there's any flaws in them whatsoever. They all look phenomenal. The effects overall are just outstanding. The gore is great. The explosions are great. The sets are well made. Overall, the effects are phenomenal. They were done by Stan Winston Studios. Though I don't think they're supervised by John Rosengrant, so I don't think that Stan Winston himself actually worked on this, but the effects were done by his studio, and they killed it. Some of the best practical effects in a zombie or monster movie I've ever seen. So with 13 fucking pros to say about one movie, I think that's the most I've ever had for any film. Do I have any cons? I have one. Sarge gets pretty frustrated throughout this film. It kind of just seems, so you can chalk it up, like I said, that he's just trying so hard to keep this situation under control and to keep the monsters and zombies from spreading. But things just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse as the film goes on. He starts to crack. But still, it just seems like toward the end of the movie, Sarge just refuses to listen to reason. He's just like, nope, kill everybody, kill everybody, kill everybody. Everybody has to die. This shit has to be contained. Everybody has to die. I don't want to take any chances. But Sam and John are both telling him not everybody is a threat. Not everybody is infected. But he's just not having any of it. And I do think still that Sarge is kind of a tragic character, but still when he kills Kid, I think that's when he stops being kind of sympathetic, and he just starts becoming unlikable. I don't quite think it's a similar dynamic to Captain Rhodes from the original Day of the Dead, where technically he's right, but because he's an asshole, nobody wants to play follow the leader. I don't think it's a case like that. I think it's just a case of someone just becoming an unreasonable person, and you can't reason with an unreasonable person, unfortunately. But still, with that being said, guys, I love the crap out of this movie. This is one of my favorite films of all time. It's one of my favorite zombie movies, and it's one of my favorite video game films, horror films, just movies overall of all time. I love the living shit out of this movie, and I give it a perfect solid gold 10 out of 10. So with all that being said, post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. Look forward to the next episode of Zombiesploitation. Originally, I was going to do Shaun of the Dead, but I'm going to change that plan, and I'm going to go back to the 80s and do a movie that features the return of a certain breed of zombies and a certain group of character or people who've worked on zombie films in the past with 1985's The Return of the Living Dead. So look forward to that. And as always, go out and remember, guys, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. And rip and fucking tear. And I will see you guys in the next video.